Hey guys, what's up? Abby here from Safari Pedals. I am super excited to be in the studio today with Mark Parfitt.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us through.
Appreciate you guys coming through.
Really appreciate it. So before we dive in and chat a little bit more, let's start with who you are, what you do, and we'll take it from there.
Well, my name is Mark Parfitt. I'm a recording and mix engineer. I've been working professionally a little over a decade now. Started by going to school for this. Started from, working in bands and loving the recording process, going to school and getting into professional studios. And, a little over a decade now, I'm still doing it and able to make primarily pop R&B music for my day-to-day.
Two-parter question. One, what inspired you to get into audio in the first place? And also, did you want to go for the R&B pop stuff from the get, or you kind of just landed there?
I totally landed there, because even if you just look at me kind of like a stereotypically, when you see stretched ears and it's very much I came from a metal and rock background, and I was kind of anti-pop a little bit growing up. And then when I got into pro studios and I was really working every day, I realized man, pop music is that's really where it's at. It's especially when you're listening to music on loop for so long, it's having something that's catchier melodically is just easier to listen to and bear through, versus heavy metal guitars for 10 hours shreds your ears off. So I noticed when I worked professionally, I was man, it's just so much more pleasing to be on pop R&B, and this is the music that's selling too. The metal bands and everything, it's a much harder path to take. And I noticed even bands, it was kind of difficult for them to get everything together, even between 4 or 5 people sometimes, where you have one successful artist, it's just them by themselves, and they have much more of a atmosphere built around them. So I initially got in not really loving pop music, but as I worked professionally, I was oh man, pop music is kind of the move. And my career just naturally, I just got honestly lucky with it putting me in this direction, because you can't quite always just direct and say, hey, I'm gonna just be a rock producer all the time. The world just doesn't always work out for you that way. And whoever you work with and your circumstances kind of navigate that. But yeah, I made a conscious decision about pop R&B, and then I just got blessed with the right opportunities that kind of opened that door, and I've just been building on it for, a couple of years now.
That's awesome. And working in genres like pop and R&B where the vocal is the star and super dominant, do you have kind of an overarching approach, principles when it comes to recording, mixing vocals, and those genres in general?
Yeah, I think it's the vocal is always first and always foremost. Everything, even though the music is such an important part of it, the vocal is what carries everything, and the vocal is what sells the song. So I think I don't say my approach would be different or anything like that, but I always just try to be very clean, direct, and I initially just try to gain stage everything properly just so I can just focus on the vocal and have everything out of the way as a starting point. But it varies from artist to artist and depending on what the person wants or what their needs are. And I always just trying to just get the vocal clear and concise as possible and as quickly as possible too.
That's really cool. And when you said you like to record things kind of clean and gain stage properly, are you for kind of recording with things on the way in, with compression and EQ, or are you more for doing that in the mixing stages?
Compression, yes. No EQ. It's very rare. Sometimes it's cool and you can take away and shape along at the beginning, but I notice with songs that I would have heavily EQ in, the life of the song changes so much over the years, because sometimes I'll record a song and it doesn't come out for maybe 5 or 6 years or 3 years, and then the production will change multiple times. I've been through album cycles where it's oh, we're gonna use this for the pop album. No, it didn't make it. Now the R&B album's out next. Now it's R&B-ify that song now. So when you commit EQ, or at least when I commit EQ, then it's kind of stuck into the shape that it was previously, where when there's no EQ, it's a little bit more open to be shaped for other, productions later. So I'm cool with just compression on the way in, just a low gain on the preamp, and same low gain output gain and low threshold on the compressor, just as a who knows what happens when you first hop on the mic. And then I kind of dial to days, but I usually just have the preamp and compressor if I'm just cutting.
I really like what you said about kind of once you EQ it going in, that's kind of the shape like it is forever. So I'm definitely going to take that going forward. It's like an interesting, I don't know, I like the analogy of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you do it tastefully, then it's whatever. But like, I think if I'm going to use an EQ, I'd want to be a little bit more heavy-handed and actually do something versus just like, if you're going to take minuscule parts, I might as well just do it in the box and take care of it later. But yeah, I think it's just when you're trying to do new productions, then it still is like you kind of have to force the sound to fit in the new production, or force the production to fit around the tone of the vocal too. So
on that note, like, are you very particular also, like when it comes to a pop record and R&B record, like in terms of microphones, like do you have like a certain palette you're a big fan of?
I have a couple that very much, are all the, typical standards as far as a 251, C800, U67, U47. I love a Manley reference cardioid as well. It's probably my favorite actually, but it is so depends on the scenario because you don't always have those. Not every studio has it, or I don't always like travel with like a whole array of microphones or even with one. So at the end of the day, I think it's just whatever mic is there is cool with me, honestly. But if I have a choice, then I'd go for one of the heavy hitting standards.
So to sum up everything we spoke about, I always love to ask the engineer producer that I'm chatting with to either drop, it can be a piece of advice or anything you want to say to the Safari World viewers. So do you have anything else to drop to the people?
Just don't doubt yourself. Don't put yourself in a box. Be always open-minded. And with music, it's all about the connection of who you're working with. So I think don't get tangled up in plugins and tech nonsense and all those things. Even though it's like the fundamental of what we do, that should almost be secondary because the relationships are going to take you much further than knowing a lot about like an EQ curve or any of the technical nonsense. It's all about finding a way to get yourself in front of, the right producer, the right artist, the right songwriter that you resonate with and that you're going to eventually build with. Because I think, these are our vessels, essentially. When you have a great artist and you lock in with them, that's your career. When you get in with a great studio and you lock in with them, that is the whole trajectory of your career. So be very mindful of who you surround yourself with and, do your best to get around people that are better than you. So you're always being challenged. And because if you're the best person in the room, you're never going to grow. You can only push yourself as far as you can. You have somebody that's way better than you, they're going to be putting the fire under you and it's going to level you up. So just try and surround yourself with as best people as possible.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much for sharing wisdom, dropping gems, having us through.
Yeah, of course.
This was awesome. And
thank you.
Guys, I'm going to link all of Mark's social medias. Everything will be below in the description. And thank you again.
Of
course. This was really awesome.
Load this up. Put it all in the mixture. Let the red devil kiss ya. Better